All right, welcome everyone as you're trickling in. Oh, I'm seeing. All right, folks are trickling in. Nice. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, let us know where you're calling in from, or I don't know. Yeah, logging in from.
See John
Um,
Grant.
yeah, Elmer, where are you based?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice. Okay,
What about
so
you?
all West Coast guys except for me. I'm East Coast, New York City.
Hey, okay. Where are you at, Kellen?
Walnut Creek, California. So what I call the deep east
Ah,
area, another 30 minutes east of Oakland.
It's
I know
where
where
Steph
that's at.
Curry lives. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Actually, okay, funny story. So my wife used to work for Apple at the Apple store, and one time she helped Steph Curry, right? And this is like way back in the day. This is probably like 10 years ago or something. And so she posted a picture with him on her Twitter and it went like mini viral because people thought it looked fake and she just got torched for like a month straight. People were just like quote tweeting, dunking on it, like, can you believe this girl Photoshop? And it's like definitely just her selling him an iPhone. It's hella funny.
That's how far we've come with AI. We think real photos are actually fake now.
Yeah.
Hey, Jed, welcome.
What's up, guys?
Dang,
How's it going?
where'd you guys get those hats?
Got him from Josh, man.
I'll send one to
Had
you
Dang,
to
after
wear it
this.
today.
missing out, missing out.
All right, awesome. So we'll get started in just a minute. Folks are trickling. Actually, you know what? It's probably a good time just to go. So want to start off with some intros. Why are we all here? Who are we? Josh, how about you kick us off, and then Kellen, Elmer, and Jed in that order.
Cool. Everybody, thanks for your time today. Josh Gillespie, head of growth at Omni. Been in sales since 2008 when I got started here
Damn.
in San Francisco. So happy to represent the OGs, those of us who are over 40, still in the game. And yeah, hope to challenge my younger Padawans here throughout the day. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Nice. My name's Kellen Casebeer. I'm founder of the Deal Lab. We're like a growth agency. So we're like a smart lead and clay partner, which I think definitely can represent like new age sales. But I think I came from like old school sales as well, like Josh. So I'm excited to see sort of like what we get into and where the overlap exists.
My name is Elmer. I'm the founder of Modern Day Sales, where we pretty much talk about, or I help AEs and SDRs improve their cold outbound in the modern day world. So more of the sales.
Good stuff. My name is Jed Mahrle. I started my career with Josh actually at PandaDoc a while back in the in-office days. I do very similar to Kellen. I run an outbound agency, Smart Lead, Clay, all those kind of new modern tools or whatnot. So I'm excited to kind of talk about that and share the differences of everything and see where we're at.
Amazing. All right, so the theme of today is old school versus new school. And Josh, as sort of the resident OG here, tell us what is the old school sales playbook from 2008?
Oh man.
What's changed? What worked then, and how's it different now?
Yeah, how much time do we have? I'll try to be quick, but I think the game is like the same but different, right? I mean, like I said, I got started in 2008. This was the pre-ZERP era. It was an economic down period and a recession in 2008. So, kind of difficult circumstances under which to get a sales career started, reminiscent of kind of the current times, right? Back then, though, like VCs would say things like, just cover your costs and focus on user growth. Now, in a similarly like weird macroeconomic environment, they're saying things like you need to get to $1 million in revenue per employee. So I think that task, especially for startups, is a much greater one, right? Insofar as like the game is now to scale revenue without scaling headcount. And that's really tough because it's more about product market fit than it is about a particular salesperson's skills or maybe even ability to sell. And that's kind of a humbling thought for me as the OG, where I expect, my experience and my past success will help carry me through. And maybe not. Like, look, like sales has always been a numbers game, right? To some extent, we all know that douche in high school that gets a girlfriend by asking out every single girl. And inevitably one will say yes. And, people are still going to play the volume game, I think, forever, and they always will. But even as like a new sales tactic or a new play or a new signal becomes effective, then people will catch on. And then that play becomes more saturated and loses efficacy over time. So I think our tech stack today is like very much like more powerful, especially in its capability, maybe via AI, to listen and observe and surveil for relevance that we can then weaponize. But now everyone is reacting to the same signals and running those same reactionary campaigns. So like the playbook back in 2008, for me, I think was more about mantras in a way than the actual plays. Like we would always say things like, we're in the business of disqualification. And that's an important concept today when we still talk about how to best use an SEP or a power dialer, which is a type of tech that we didn't have, right, in 2008. And starting with more of like a qualified list than spray and pray campaigns. Like just because I have AI and I can do personalization at scale doesn't necessarily mean that's going to work any better. And I actually think like the old school playbook is kind of where things are starting to maybe revert in a way as everyone kind of loses efficacy in the volume-based channels. Like you need to still like get face to face. You still need to go get a badge, right? And go on site, like get a plane. You need to work the conference circuit. You need to build up trust and rapport. You need to figure out how to continuously add new value, novel insights to your sales engagement, like throughout the process. So I think, it's same but different. No tool will ever like save you in sales. Even if some tools like give you a lot of time back, great. It's still going to be more about like, what are you going to do with all of that time?
Yeah. Awesome. No, it's really good perspective. And thank you, Kellen, also for posting in the chat. I've got my eye on the chat, so please send your questions. I know we got a ton of, I see sales directors, AEs, SDRs. We want to make sure that this conversation is as relevant for you all as possible, that we add value in this hour. So please put in your questions and I'll direct them to the group here. But on the topic of mantras, Jed, I know one of your mantras is laser focus. What does that mean to you, I guess, being laser focused in sales? And what does that mean in 2025 versus when you got started, 2019, 2020?
Oh yeah, it's good. I didn't even know that was one of my mantras, but I guess I must say that a lot in terms of content and everything. So I'll roll with it. I like it. I think anytime I guess used that phrase like laser focus is it kind of goes to what Josh was saying. Um, there are now like so many tools and available insights that you can get on your target prospects that there's really no excuse not to be laser focused, if you will, in terms of like the specific accounts you're reaching out to, the specific people within those accounts, and then the timing and the reason for why you're reaching out. There's really no reason not to know like who you should be reaching out to and when, if you're using tools to the best of your ability. But then to Josh's point, it's not like you can just bring on one of these tools and it's going to intuitively know like who you should be reaching out to and when. You have to do the work of test, like you have to come up with the hypotheses based on current customers or previous outbound campaigns you ran. And then using that data, you have to start running small tests and figuring out, where you're going to have the best results and kind of go from there. And that's way different from, I mean, I haven't been in sales for decades or even a decade, but at least from when I first became a tech SDR in 2019, the only like signals and things that I was using was just like sales navigator filters, like who's changing jobs, who's raising revenue, or who's raising funding rounds, kind of those like sort of basic triggers or signals that you see people using a lot. And I think that actually worked really well for a couple of years. And then 2020 hit, more people are remote. There's like way higher email volume going out. There's more automation. People are running the same playbooks, and then you have to adapt and move to the new things. That's the way I kind of see things. But yeah, let me know, Sawyer, if you want me to go more in depth in any areas.
No, that's great. I'm actually curious. Maybe you could respond to this question from Nelson. Like, what do you see as the next wave of outbound? It's spray and pray at one point in time. That now it's a lot of personalization at scale, signal-based plays. Are you seeing kind of the future of new school sales being about, more volume, more conversion, or what's on your mind right now there? What do you think is going to be successful next?
So, yeah, it's a good question. I still work with teams where they have either I help them place SDRs or they have current SDRs. And my goal is to eliminate everything off their plate so they can spend as much time as possible, both on the phones and calling leads who are already kind of engaging on the phones as well. And I still think, like, as much as I talk about cold email, the phone has by far been like the most consistent channel of getting meetings. Depends on the product, but in general, like the higher the ACV, the more complicated the product, the better I've seen phones work, which is where I think outbound is best for regardless, in terms of making the numbers work. But yeah, I think it's all about like your like email still works great. You could still get results from that. Again, if you're laser focused, if you will, it's not necessarily about more volume. It's about reaching out to the right people at the right time. But then getting your reps to spend as much time on the phones with a power parallel dialer, and making the most of that time. I see the phones working really well. I also have been toying around with a couple of clients that are doing more in-person events, like Josh mentioned earlier as well, particularly for more of that like complex high ACV SaaS where it's not just like a simple implementation. Like you kind of have to start those relationships. And if you can start them in person, it's a lot easier to, convert that into a sale. So those are a couple things, but yeah, that's kind of the way I see it. I still think phone is the best, and, spending more time there, it's not an excuse.
Yeah. No, thank you. And we're getting some really great questions in the chat. Scaling small revenue teams, using AI to find just super
I,
niche information. Yeah, what's up?
I just said you can't use tools to save you, and now they
I
want to know what
know.
tools to use. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
Well, sometimes it is the tool, right? It's you gotta sort of balance the skill and the mantras in the approach with the tools. And I know Kellen is somebody who knows a lot about the tools and how to use them intelligently. So I'm curious, like what are you finding, whether it's old school that still works today? Because I don't want to just get us on the tools, right? But um, the tools that are helpful, but also, the approach. Like what are you finding successful today, to get at these really niche pieces of data?
Yeah, I think to me, anytime you're like thinking about like an initiative, right, in a business, to me, there's like this order of prioritization that happens, right? And like at the top is sort of like you have some sort of goal, right? So it's like, what are we trying to accomplish? I think it's really important to like anchor to that. Underneath that, you have like a strategy to hit that, which is like a concept, right? Like an idea or a thing. And then under that, you have like tactics and tools and stuff, right? And so I think the first important thing is like don't do tool selection before like what's our goal? What's the strategy? Like what do we think we need to do differently? Right? Because someone's like, I need a niche industry. And like one person's like, yo, like scrape every one of these and append it with all this stuff. And like that totally might be the way. But like what does niche industry mean? Like what is the industry? Right? Because I would say it's like depending on what the industry is, there's probably different processes. Some examples, right? Like the easiest, simplest thing is like Ocean.io, lookalike searches, and sort of like their algorithm, like their data tool where you could be like, here's some, here's 3 companies that are like this niche industry. Find me more. And then you can like kind of tune that in. That's like the super transactional, like do a tool at face value. And we love their tool. What we would do is sort of like run a larger search. In machine learning model scoring, there's like these 2 metrics used, right? There's precision and recall, right? And so if you think of like recall is of 10 companies that are this niche industry, did I get all 10 of them or 9 of them or 8 of them? Right. And so it's sort of like of the total group we want, how many did I get? And then precision is of everything that was returned to me, how many are only the things I want? Right. So it returned 12 things, but only 10 are the right thing. Right. And so these are both different ways that you can dial these, it's how machine learning models are measured, but we can think of it in like data acquisition, where the first thing to me is like maximize the yield of the thing you want. Right. So I would in today, like in the modern sales like paradigm, we can use AI and stuff to like filter things down so fast at such scale with such precision that instead of me like go to the website, check it out, go to the website, check it out, which is like incremental time cost, I can like design the way to filter against these things. I can maximize my recall, like, maybe go, hey, there's 100,000 of the right company. I just took 500,000 companies. I know it's messy as hell, but it has all of what I want. And then I put it through this filtering mechanism that's going to make this list precise so that the thing you end up with is only what you want, but the maximum amount of it. And I think that's what's usually important in precise industries because there's often easy ways to get 80 per, it's like classic Pareto, like easy ways to get a lot of it, but not be comprehensive. And then the way to be comprehensive is usually a lot more effort. And I would also kind of point back to like, do you actually need the comprehensive data set? Because if usually that last 20% incrementality of like comprehensive data, if you think that's the make or break, like it's not going to work, right? And it's actually probably like go back to the 80%, the easy stuff, dial in your messaging, positioning. Once you're really winning there, then start to cover for like, all right, let's get it all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think the lesson there is it's sort of you have to think strategic and big picture and then narrow it in, right? And I think what I'm curious about, and maybe Elmer would love your perspective on this, is um, a lot of the folks in the chat right now, they're AEs, they're SDRs. They might not have that corporate credit card that they could just put in and buy, top up all their Clay credits and Ocean IO and all of that. Like, what are you finding successful nowadays? Like, how are you upskilling yourself? Like, what do you think as an SDR, as an AE is really important to succeed nowadays and in the future?
Yeah, I think most companies are going towards having AEs self-source a lot, especially in this kind of economy, is what I've been realizing. They're letting go of most of the SDRs and just upping their AEs so they can close plus do all the prospecting. But a lot of these AEs, they've like dusted off all their SDR skills, and that's where I see SDR or where I see AEs fail, and that's why I saw many get in pips and just get let go many times. So I think nowadays it's just a matter of really learning and honing in on the tools that you have access to today and understanding like how to truly prospect in today's world, right? Like it's not about spraying and praying because it's not going to work anymore. With all the AI, enough people are spraying and praying, no one's going to read that. So it's more being focused on like, hey, with these people, former customers, being strategic, like new hires. If it's director of IT and you're selling like an IT software, and they're new to a company, perfect timing to reach out. If they're 3 months in. 1 month in is too soon, but 3 months in is perfect, because they're going to come into a company and be ready to like change things, right? Especially if they're a director. Looking at things like funding is going to be important. It doesn't necessarily tell you, hey, this company is like in market, but it's telling you, hey, these people have money and they're doing well. I think department headcount growth percentage is huge. That's something you can do in Sales Navigator. I think a lot of people don't take advantage of that. Like if you're selling a product like ZoomInfo, right? They're selling to salespeople, and you see a prospect company that their sales department is growing. They're growing a lot of SDRs and they're outbound SDRs. Perfect timing for someone or a sales rep at ZoomInfo to reach out and start selling them products, right? So I think it's just a matter of where you're looking. A lot of people in my community ask me like, "Hey, like I'm not doing well. I'm not getting any responses." And then I ask them like, "Hey, what are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, I just go to the advanced search in ZoomInfo and just put in people within my ICP into a list and start dialing." I'm like, "That's not going to work for you nowadays. You have to get a little bit more targeted than that."
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And like Elmer, I know you've shared your story recently about going through a layoff, and that's something that unfortunately, has always been a part of the SDR AE life, just sales in general, right? And probably recently it's picked up a bit. As there's been so much volatility and everybody wants, like what can we automate? What can we bring AI SDRs in for? So like, you're starting your job search today. Are you trying to say, hey, I got to become a prompt engineer? I got to learn Clay. Like, what do you feel like is successful to be a really good sales IC in 2025?
Yeah, I think I was already still crushing it at that company before I got laid off. Like I booked 28 meetings in 1 month, which was pretty crazy as an AE. Inbounds were insanely slow. Like I had no inbounds, and that's not what I was promised when I joined the company. That's pretty much why they ended up having layoffs too, because they overhired. And um, funny enough, the whole economy that we're in today, they have a big like customer base of nonprofits, and nonprofits just lost the funding to buy that product, right? But for me, I
Mm,
think just doing what I was doing before, right when I join a new company, I'm looking at closed loss reports. I'm looking at former customer reports. I'm looking at people that looked at us a year ago, and I'm going really hard on those, cold calling them, putting them into sequences, reaching out via LinkedIn. And honestly, that's what helped me book 28 meetings in 1 month as an AE. Like, I know people were surprised about it, but like that's what you have to do if you're not getting any inbounds.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think full cycle seems to be the name of the game for AEs nowadays. And Josh, I mean, you're sort of doing this the next level up, which is, the sort of solo growth team for a 5-person startup, marketing plus
Yeah.
sales, everything is inbound, outbound, all self-sourced. Like what's working today? How do you approach this problem of building a growth motion basically from nothing?
Yeah, I think it depends on, who you are and what stage you're at. I think for us being like super early stage, right, trying to get to our first couple million in revenue, it's more about building a brand, doing demand generation that generates a good amount of inbound, especially when you're still in build it mode, right? We don't have a necessarily a completely finished product. We're still learning as we go. And so for all those reasons, yeah, I will say like sitting in the buyer's chair, for example, like we just had our own fundraising announcement like a month ago, and that was very public information. Within like the next 3 weeks, I got 1,000 emails that go, "Hey Josh, congrats on your recent funding," and then the next sentence or paragraph is, "This is what we do." And like the timing is right. Sure, like we got a few million bucks in the bank to spend. Obviously, we need to grow the company, so we need to spend that money. So the timing to send me that message is right. But that play was so oversaturated that I didn't respond to a single one of those emails. None of them felt um, like they really cared about me, right? Before they just had some bot react to that publicly available information. So I do think the trick is in creating signals moving forward, not necessarily um, responding to them. Like some signals are probably worth chasing. If I have a former champion that switches over to a new org, like, cool, I should probably shoot him a note and see if he can be a champion again. But like sometimes the website de-anonymization chase game or the funding chase game, like be aware of the signals that you're chasing and how easy it is for other people to run those same plays. And I would discourage you from signal chasing if the play is actually that obvious. It's more about novel insights. And how can I
Yeah.
leverage AI to get to novel insights versus something that's so obvious?
Actually,
So I want to maybe the Kellen, this is going to touch on what you're going to talk about. Let me know if I'm wrong here.
yeah.
Maybe this is rolling a little bit of a grenade into this, but a lot of the talk right now is around signals and this concept of GTM alpha, right? Like, is there some special data I can get that will sort of put me ahead of the pack? Is that real? Is there such a thing as GTM alpha?
I think definitely yes, but I think the difference is like it's not the data. It's not, it's perspective. And so you don't need, so like if you think about messaging, right, a prospect only perceives like the communication, right? They see an email, they hear a phone or like a voice on a phone conversation, right? Like they get some little message, zero semblance of what went into that. They do not care. They don't know. There's no way they could know. They don't know, like, oh, I took all, I scraped this and filtered, but doesn't matter. Similarly, like to Josh's point, if all your messages is like there's this known thing that exists and I'm doing it, here's the same plug at the end of that, there's no like perspective change. It's just like, yeah, you know what I mean? People, it's kind of like I'm aware that stuff like that sort of exists. And so I believe that what like the way to be compelling in messaging and sort of like really like amplify the agreeability of messaging is basically think of it as like reps learn like, here's your target market, here's the problems they face, here's what we can do for them. But when you're doing cold outreach, they're not buying, right? They're agreeing to talk to you. The only reason they're going to do that is because they think they're going to like learn things or gain some sort of perspective that's going to be helpful towards their top goal, strategy, tactics, right? And so a lot of times we're thinking through like, I see these things and we're jumping way ahead to like what I can do for you and not thinking of like what is the way this person might be thinking about what they're trying to solve, what is like the conflict and sort of tension in that thinking, and how can I communicate to them to share like I understand this tension exists, I have a nuanced perspective, we have familiarity with your world, and hey, would it be interesting for us to talk about like thing, you know what I mean? And the problem is a lot of people are chasing like the data where they think like there's this data and then the message ends up basically the same, and it's really just amplifying like I don't actually have anything unique to say, and I'm kind of trying to like hack into you saying yes to me versus actually like give you something that's helpful.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting perspective on perspective, right? And how it can't just be the data, therefore buy my shit, right? It's got to be something in between. And I'm curious, I mean, Kellen or Jed or Elmer, Josh, whomever, like, how do you go about translating, like filling in that middle, bridging the gap between data to perspective to like an actually, useful message that will get you meetings?
I'll take a quick swing and then you
Go
guys,
for
but
it.
like I think to me that's the wrong order. like if you have data and you're like, what's the story? It's like the data is the story. If you already decided this is the data, like you already decided what you're going to say. And so to
Yeah.
me, what I do is I start from what is the prospect? I think about like their life. They're sitting in this job, they're doing stuff. And I think of like essentially what would be a hyper agreeable way to like I start from like what would they agree to and then back into like how can I make that true for like what we actually do. You know,
Mm.
because it's way more important to think about like what is this person feeling? What is their tension? What is the conflict in their life? Like what, you know, like what are they dealing with, and speak into like I sort of understand this, but not necessarily be so presumptive to be like I totally know your situation, right? Like Will already talks about this like uncertainty thing, you know, and so like I think that it's like you have to have this perspective and then you go get the data to like prove that the story you're trying to tell this person is like congruent. You know what I mean? And people who go data first, it just doesn't work because like it's just, you know, zeros and ones basically.
Yeah. Anyone
Oh,
else?
I would concur. A different take is like, look, we have all these tools that can look at like a preponderance of data, right? Like public facing, like this is what Omni does. It's a research solution that looks at everything online. And it can, yeah, generate interesting insights from that, but you still need to research the research. Like where the true insight comes from is still like from human to human. And like take any kind of large like mid-market or enterprise prospect or target. Probably in like even a 10 to 50K deal, you're going to have somewhere like 20 potential stakeholders involved. It's going to be a 3 to maybe 9 month sales cycle. Yeah, even for 5-figure deals now, right? Buyers have kind of slowed down. We're in this era of tool consolidation, despite having a preponderance again of new tools available to them. But what's important to know is like how a company operates as far as like their authority hierarchies, like what really happened the last time they tried to buy the last AI tool or SaaS solution and how that went, their ability to onboard tools to enable users to use them on their side. These are all questions that are pretty unique and kind of like you can only get to by having a real human connection with the org, by having a real champion. So like I think there's amazing tools. We've already listed like a lot of them that can help you get to the right data, but you probably still need to know like or have some assumption of like what your problem is before you go cherry picking for that data. And then know that there's a gap. Like there's always a gap in the most important data that you can only get from another human who knows what's going on inside their org in real time.
Can I double down on what they just said, Sawyer, if you
Yeah,
don't
of
mind?
course.
Because I really think, like, especially what Kellen said is such a good takeaway with starting with the perspective and then finding the data that matches that. I just want to give folks in this call like a very tangible example. So one thing that I'll try to do and work with a new company is like asking their sales reps, what is like the perfect lead that falls in your lap once a month when it comes inbound? Like tell me about the company, the prospect, why they came inbound, what was the aha moment that made them like finally decide to book a demo. And for those of you who are account executives on that call, you're probably starting to think like, okay, it's always these specific job titles or these types of companies, and this is always the main thing. And then work backwards from there and build data based off that. I'll give you guys a very specific example. There's a client I work with that is like a digital community platform. And one of their biggest differentiators is they help these community creators build their own branded app for their community. So instead of running it in Slack or Facebook groups, you can build a branded app. Not everybody needs that though, right? And so one of the things where they were noticing people coming inbound looking for a branded app is they've been running a community on their own platform for a while. They built a platform and they're struggling with monetization or they're not growing at the same rate. And so our offer, like our give, our reason for wanting them to, or for our reason for them to join a call, kind of to Kellen's point was, do you want to jump on a call and we can share other branded apps in your niche so you can see an example of what this could look like for you. And that was really compelling to these people. But we started with reaching out to people who aren't on Slack, aren't on Facebook, are specifically on their own community platform. They've been running it for a while. And then we were looking for signals that maybe their growth rate wasn't where it used to be, or their growth is slowing down, or their engagement rate isn't where it should be. And so like you start with what you're already seeing from like inbound or current customers and you work backwards from there. And I just wanted to share that as a specific example for maybe some of the AEs on this call that are trying to think how to put that into action.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's pretty much impossible nowadays to talk about the new school of sales and all of that without, data is one piece. The other piece of that, of course, is AI and automation and all of these things. In what we're talking about here, this idea of building a perspective, working backwards from like basically understanding the story first before you try to find data to go fit that story. Like, what's the role of AI in all of this? Like, can you just sort of plug in an AI SDR and expect it to work? Like, I'm curious for anyone's take on this.
Josh, do you have a hot take on
I,
this? I know I'm wearing the
I
hat,
want
but
to.
it's
I want to let Kellen go. I want to let Kellen go
Okay.
first, and then we'll just full
Yeah.
battle.
Well, I think it's the same thing. Like I was actually talking to some people about this last night at like a SaaSer event where like the idea is like as AI gets like crazy good, right? Like you imagine like AI maximized, like let's just say in like Jed can have $1 billion company because he just has a bunch of one person company, $1 billion just Jed, right? My belief is like there will always be like the architects of the world who are because if Jed had $1 billion company, he doesn't want to run billing. You know what I mean? Like if he has $1 billion, he's going to give someone $1 million to do billing. He's going to give another person $1 million to go do opportunity. Like you're still going to disperse stuff. People don't want all the problems. You know what I mean? And so I think that you'll have like consolidation and things like that. But I still believe that like the future will have people who have their own unique perspectives that are architecting these models to then go like apply their lens at scale, like autonomously for them. And so to me, like the practical version of that, I had a client who worked with like forklift wholesalers, right? So they had to be like middleman forklift dealers. And so the way to get that list was like scrape Google Maps of every single forklift dealer adjacent thing, right? Like we had like hundreds of thousands of results that were like maybe the right thing. And then we run a bunch of like Claygen, like Clay AI things against it to basically say like, look at this business. Are they a wholesaler? Like, are they definitely not a retailer? Are they definitely not a manufacturer? Right. And like run through all these different checks. And for each record, it might be 2/1000ths of a penny, right? So instead of what used to be like whether you were doing it or you're like hiring a VA or someone else to do it, like you can now just load this table and be like, here's a bunch of BS. Like I know that there's some needles in the haystack here. You can like kind of laterally program like a logical like how would Kellen go about check 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 check, and then you click play and it'll do it for 200,000 records over a day, and you come back and you have like the perfect thing, And so my lens is like why did that work? Because I could articulate extremely well exactly what I want. And you go get, 50 other people and go, hey, we need something to get this. And like the average way someone will articulate this is what I want will be so weak that the actual end result will also suck. And so it still takes like expertise, like nuanced perspective and a level of effort. Just like literally just the straight effort part is like an arbitrage available for people as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think AI SDRs, what bothers me about it is just like all of my best deals in my own life have been sourced by a human that did the hard task of cold prospecting and turned nothing into what then became like a six-figure deal. And those stories are awesome. And I just love human SDRs, but I think it's just more a juxtaposition of where we're at now, right? Where the efficacy of our cold calls, the efficacy of our email campaigns, of our LinkedIn messaging, all of our traditional SDR channels are going down from a conversion standpoint, no matter what they say. So therefore, let's let the bots do it. Let's let the prospecting be taken over by AI. Let's attempt personalization at scale. But and probably, given the times, businesses need to do both. They need to do kind of more like mass marketing outreach as an overlay and see if some of that stuff does stick. And they also need more highly targeted messaging coming from like the ICs. So I think we're just transitioning from having humans do this in somewhat inefficient way, right? Because back in 2008, I could only make $150 a day, and that was a lot of work. Even if I have a power dialer, now I need a bigger list, right, to load up into that. So yeah, things are changing. Things feel like the SDR role is slowly being eliminated for better or worse. And I kind of agree with what Elmer said earlier, where like, yeah, the best AEs moving forward are those that know how to leverage and grow like their own book of business and pipe.
Yeah. I mean, and I'd love, Elmer, your thoughts on this is like the other side of new school, right? It's like we're talking about AI, talking about data, but like The other thing that's really seen a renaissance lately is social and LinkedIn, especially in the B2B space. Like, how are you leveraging LinkedIn, and like, how does an AE or even an SDR, if they're trying to do this too, like, how can you be successful on that channel, and how do you turn social selling into something that's like predictable and repeatable?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think where people mess up on LinkedIn is that they don't know how to be human. And they just pitch slap left and right, and that's the biggest problem. Um, Anytime I actually get a meeting booked, it came from just having a casual conversation. And it's genuinely just looking at their profile, seeing any kind of interest. And if there isn't any kind of interest, just simply talking about where they're from, right? Like if it says they're from Colorado and you know you've been to Colorado, there's a place you like, you can easily mention it in the beginning of the conversation and just have a conversation from there, right? Rather than pitch slapping them and just getting ignored right away, because at the end of the day, that's probably not going to work for you, right? So I think that ability of just being human is going to help you win more than anyone else that's out there, because I think all the E's and SDRs have forgotten how to do that. And they're just kind of just doing as much high volume as they can. So, I mean, try that out and just see how it goes for you. But that's what's worked for me.
Cool. So yeah, it's so interesting. It's like we're talking about these two different, very extreme poles. One is how human can you be, right? One to one, social, be vulnerable, sort of talk about, the social selling that's most effective is the most human. And then the other side is what can I automate? How do I leverage my time and kind of replicate what a human would do as effectively as possible? And these two things kind of live very separately from one another. I mean, Elmer, like I think something that like I have tried to do is that social selling piece, and I'm not very good at it, admittedly. I mean, what's your like, do you have a playbook for this? Like, how do you teach someone who says, "Hey, I want to learn how to social sell. All I've been doing my entire career is smiling and dialing and hitting the button on outreach. Like, where do I get started with this?"
Yeah. I mean, I think posting definitely helps. Like initially when I started posting on LinkedIn, it was to bring in leads for my very first one of my companies I was at as an SDR. And it sort of worked at first, but I didn't have that many followers yet, so it wasn't like crazy good. But then as my following grew, social selling really just started to work for me. Like at one of the companies I was at, I was able to bring in an 18K deal just because the post went viral. And I think just like posting in general will help you stand out is one thing, if that's something you're open to, of course, but that's definitely going to help you out. And then just some of the other things I mentioned earlier for sure.
Cool. Um, and I sort of want to tie this together because it seems like a lot of folks, and we do this as well. Like you know, we try to leverage the social channels as much as possible. And we do it with a lot of automation also. Like we have, stuff that scrapes who likes our LinkedIn, and we can enrich the folks and sort of do that outbound. Is that something you leverage at all?
No, but that sounds pretty cool.
Um, well,
I
so
actually had like an
yeah,
SDR one
yeah.
time, like when I made a promo post for my company just to get leads, I had the SDR go through all the likes and through the comments and start reaching
Mm,
out.
yeah.
But if you guys can do that with AI, I guess that could work, but as long as it's a little bit more personalized or relevant.
Yeah, it's got to be personalized, but it's just like a little it's like how do you like replicate the sort of tedious stuff, right? Like that's always
Yeah.
the goal. It's is that really sort of the highest and best use of your time? Probably not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are other ways that you can spend your time that are a little bit better. So I want to bring it back in the last 20 minutes or so to one shared kind of topic that I has been a subject of discussion on social and really everywhere. It's, this new emerging role of GTM engineering. What is that? Is it real? Is it here to stay? Callan, I'm curious your thoughts first. Like, what is a GTM engineer? What's your definition of this thing?
Yeah, it's a good
Don't
question.
answer the question by telling us what it's not.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting, right? Because so like tactically, literally, I think what people refer to as a GTM engineer broadly is like the idea of sort of this like it's like part RevOps, part sales or marketing. I don't care about that argument, but like whatever. But it's kind of like this idea is like it's a little bit more technical, right? Like APIs and integrations and stuff. I think oftentimes people think of it as like a little bit more like scaled, right? Like a little bit more like you don't need six of these people, right? Maybe you need like one or a couple or something. Uh, I mean, it's interesting because like a lot of people kind of like hate on it, like, oh, you don't just need this thing. Like I go back to like goals, strategy, tactics, where it's like, hey, look, like there's plenty of situations where this thing makes a ton of sense. And I also agree that it's not like you're an idiot if you don't give someone this title. I'll say I don't use this title for myself. My lens is like, I'm not a technical person. Like I'm technically good with these things, but like I'm like a creative and I'm like a artist, I think. And I've been doing a lot of these same ideas long before a lot of these tools sort of existed. And I think that there's a proliferation of ability to do some things, and Clay, like I love Clay. Like I'm a partner of Clay, like they've changed my life. So it's like I literally love them. I think and I like their mindset about it. They're like technical people a little bit. You know what I mean? Like they are like this engineer lens on it. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I think like the GTM engineer thing, it's kind of interesting. I would just go back to like goals, strategy, tactics. And it's sort of like if you're gonna just crush your goals without it, don't worry about it. If you're not going to hit your goals and you're looking for new things, like, maybe someone like this can be helpful. I personally also just don't like the commodification of skill sets. Like, I am not one of a bunch of anything. And also, when you communicate to the market, terms have extremely loaded meaning. So if I go, hey, Sawyer, like, do you want a GTM engineer? And you're like, hell yeah, a lot of people think that means something. It does not. It means nothing. Like who knows? And it's super loaded. And so I would much rather again go back to like literally what are we trying to accomplish? What does that actually in like practical terms look like? Operationally, what needs to be done? Who's going to do what of that? If I fit into that equation, great. And if we get through all that and it's like you don't need me, that's also cool. And I think to me that's like evergreen. You know what I mean? I don't like anything that's like hacky or like momentary arbitrage. It's like this other thing is just lasts forever, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very like English major answer. This sort of I am not this term. No, that's a really good perspective. I mean, Jed, would love your take on this. Are you a GTM engineer? What is a GTM engineer? Can you define it for us? Is it just good marketing from Clay?
I kind of said that as a joke, but I also think that there's part of truth to that too. I mean, it is like I don't like I think I feel like most people associate it a lot with like Clay. Um, I think Kellen gave a great explanation, and I think that's part of the issue is there's no like super clear definition. But the way I think about it is like GTM engineering is like the practice or skill of uh, scaling go to market or revenue or outbound without adding headcount and doing that through AI, automations, things like that. And one of those tools is Clay and using all these other tools as well to accomplish that, which I think is a good skill for anybody to learn. And I think whether you want to call it engineering or GTM engineering or just AI or automation, I think I would almost argue it's a necessary skill for sales reps to learn if they want to be in it long term, because it's just the fact that that's where things are going. And so, yeah, I don't really necessarily call myself that, but like I'm trying to learn as much about those things so I can stay ahead of the game. But again, I don't think it's not like specific to one tool. It's just I just see it as how do I scale revenue without adding headcount through systems and automation.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, Josh, how about you? What do you consider a GTM engineer to be? Do you agree with Kellen and
Oh my
Jed?
God. Yeah, kind of. I like what Kellen just said about GTM artist. I think we can all adopt that one instead or start some GTM art courses. Yeah, it seems like it came from Clay because Clay requires maybe a more kind of technical persona to really master and some dedication there to learn how to be an orchestrator of agentic workflows. And there's some art there for sure. I think skepticism for me comes from starting my sales career like before the golden era, where we started getting into predictability and making things repeatable and scalable, and that was the right thing when times are good. And it felt like during that era, rev ops, which from like when I started maybe was sales ops. Now it's revenue ops. Now the entire org is revenue focused. And revenue ops probably acquired some power on top of the revenue org as to the sales motions, the sales plays, the outreach. And it felt like those who own the motions left sales leadership and went more into the operational or marketing sides. Maybe it was always kind of like that, but it felt like during the ZERP era, there was this migration of authority to revenue operations. And now coming off the heels of that, we're in a time period where I think we need better salespersonship, right? Like those with strong EQs, those who are resilient given the times. And it feels like we're still maybe over leveraging now on the automation side and empowering a new class of role called go-to-market engineering, which is a single human who can orchestrate all of these tools and connect them all and build out your go-to market and do all this and that. And it seems a little scary to me in how omnipotent the role is portrayed. And now that every company wants to hire one and like reduce their headcount. So it's just strange because I think yeah, there's risk in over automating. There's risk in not having real like sales and subject matter expertise infused into those who are running those motions. And it just makes me question, yeah, if the need for this new role just comes because everyone's failing, or if there's actually like a real there.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And I mean, I think I'm curious to Elmer, your take. Like, is your next dream job a GTM engineer? Or do you think you're in kind of old school, new school sales for the long haul?
Old school, new school sales for the long haul for sure. I barely
Yeah.
even understand the whole GTM engineer motion. Kellen was talking about it the other day, and I got a little bit lost. And just it's good to learn about it though, because it definitely sounds like it's a new role that more companies are going to be having. So I think it's good to have any kind of knowledge base about it without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Uh,
Elmer, you've expressed interest in like, leveling up your career, right? And getting into sales leadership. But like, what does sales leadership look like 2 years from now? It's not, what it was before managing a large team of headcount. It probably will be more of an operator now.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the company though, right? Like I think that's what's gonna that's gonna be what's gonna be dependent the most, but I can see that happening too for sure.
yeah. So, yeah, really, really love all of the conversation so far. Please, folks, keep throwing questions in the chat. But I'm going to toss it to Josh because, something that we do at Omni, we folks who brought you all here, we are trying at least to build part of the future of sales. What's the new school, the newest new school of go to market? Josh, do you want to give everyone a preview? Actually, not even a preview, a look into what they can do today?
With Omni, the new
Yeah,
release.
with Omni.
All right, cool. I'll just share my screen. I'm not going to beat you guys up with the demo. And again, here we go. Doot. Um, just as, yeah, like a precursor, we're not trying to take your jobs. We're just trying to help ICs, AEs, SDRs, account managers, folks like myself, where historically, right, we've all spent hours and hours and hours on research, on trying to inform our point of view, on saying something relevant, on, preparing ourselves to, yeah, impress, right, and be smart. And these are the tasks that would take me many, many hours at the end of the day, scouring LinkedIn, scouring blogs, looking online, having RSS feeds, right, with Google News. There's a lot of data out there with which we should find and then be strategic with. When I think of like the best possible, like biggest win for AI for me as an enterprise seller, it's consolidating the time spent scouring the world of potentially relevant information and consolidating that down into like a few minutes. And what you care about changes, right? So we launched Omni 2.0 here. It's chat based, so you can ask it anything you want. You can upload a knowledge graph of your selling dispositions. So we first want to understand like who you are, who you sell to, what are your buyer personas, what are your customer case stories, who are you competing for funding, and like we want to collect all of that information up front before attempting to do like strategic research on your behalf. And I think that's where ChatGPT, right, maybe leaves something to be desired, where, if you're like copy pasting prompts from LinkedIn comments, those probably are going to give you some more of like a generic output. If you haven't already trained your own GPT on your unique selling disposition first. So maybe, if you're testing out ChatGPT, at work, it's a step in the right direction, but I would encourage you to test out Aomni and build out a knowledge graph first if, yeah, the goal is really to be strategic. And so you can see some of like the agents, right, that we've built out. Probably if you're on LinkedIn or if you're in sales or if you're in tech, you've heard the agent word a lot like this year. And it's just really a way of automating some specific task or workflow that you would otherwise have to do, and also then delivering it to you in some specific format or report or action. So lookalike, right? A CEO sequencer. Kellen brought up Ocean.io. We actually integrate with them. So you can come here. You can tell us like what's the criteria of the company you're looking for. What's the solution information that you want to incorporate for your outreach. You can connect a knowledge graph as well. What's the specific goal that you have here? Right, Kellen? He got perked up. And then the number of similar companies to find, like narrow the scope, right? If we want to get to a higher quality output, instead of go find me every single business that has more than 50 salespeople in the state of Montana, right? We can be a little bit more prescriptive when running these agents. So yeah, lead enrichment and outreach, security incidents, right? Maybe we're ambulance chasing and selling a security software, and we want to know of public breaches, account research, competitor analyst, personality Pokemon. I don't know what that is, Sawyer. What is the Pokemon one?
It's just a silly take on like a personality analyzer, but it does finds your spirit Pokemon for you.
Which
No,
is
and actually I want to so talking about that, like you were going through the form of like, how many, like what's the goal of the conversation? What's your knowledge base previously? These are all custom built, built by the AI agent. And, this is just me speaking personally as actually a Clay user formerly and still today a little bit, is I always get frustrated by tools that make you fit your process and your automation and kind of conform your business logic to their system, right? Where Clay says, look, it's a spreadsheet. It's certain amount of rows, certain amount of columns. That's what you get. Everything you do has to run through this structure. But in reality, like your business logic, how you kind of tell that story of who am I trying to target? What do I actually, what's the story that I want to tell them? How do I reach them? That might not fit into a spreadsheet that easily. And so our system is going to be really flexible, letting you kind of put in whatever you want, work with that data, work with that work in AI system in any way you want, and kind of get out, whether it's a sequence, whether it's data, whether it's some sort of report, a Pokemon, whatever, we can work with it. So the flexibility is and customizability there is kind of really the selling point for us.
And I also think, I mean, like to me, like there is a clear dichotomy of like use between like, like these. To me, like Clay's like their marketing team, Bruno, right? They came from Webflow, right? And at Webflow, they went and they're like, we want Webflow developer, designer to be like a job title in companies. So then we'll have this like three-way, ecosystem where it's like the tool, the engineers like implementing the tool, and then the companies who want the benefit of the tool, right?
Yep.
And there's like this little flywheel to it. And so to me, what that represents is like you have these like service experts who sort of help unlock the big picture core value, and that like the average necessarily user, it's not that it's inaccessible, but it's like you're gonna go learn, it's like here's a guitar, like you got to go learn to play it. I'm not saying guitar is crazy hard, but no one ever picked it up and was like, oh, what's my favorite song? Like it doesn't work that way, right? But I think there's other tools, and to me, like you guys present much more like, you could equip your people with this, and it's like you don't need to know a lot of this minutia, just like
We're
interact.
like the garage band, just sort of put in
Which
the
is great
instruments,
though.
put in the beat. Yeah.
Totally. And especially, I mean, like, or even maybe like a karaoke thing, where it's like, hey, it's gonna play the song, it's gonna give you the words, like, it's got these guardrails, and you get to come in and just play the role like you kind of want to on top of that. And I just think it's interesting because I see a lot of people thinking about like Clay and other tools, and they're not really going like, who is going to be the user and what does that actually unlock for us? Because like you wouldn't want to give 50 reps, a bunch of spreadsheets and be like, go wild.
Yeah. So would love in the last 6 minutes or so, there's been a lot of good conversation in the channel, the chat as well. Any parting words? Jed, Elmer, Josh, Kellen?
Yeah, there's a question from
Elmer?
Chris here.
Oh,
He
go ahead,
said,
Cal.
what does good look like in 2025 to create your own pipeline? What's one thing you should do in your messaging and one thing you should stop doing? to be effective, concise, relevant, personal, and do it at scale. So to me, like if I'm solving this, the first thing I would do is I'd pull like a 20/80 of your TAM, right? So I wouldn't go comprehensive, but I do like minimal effort to basically get your whole TAM, like relatively, or whatever you think generally that is. I would segment it across familiar segments, like that everyone who's a rep does. Then I would go one layer deeper and I would try to like get a little more granular so that you have sort of this like uniqueness to this familiar place, right? Then I map out the personas in these things. So it's kind of like this person in this specific unique situation of this familiar market cares about certain things. I'd map out all the different like angles, like these are my, you know, the directional statements to this persona in the segment of this market. And then I would just run those campaigns and like measure the relativity. And basically what you're doing is you're like, there's a million things that could work, and you're going to start zeroing in on what does work relatively the best. And at some point, you're either going to disqualify, like this sucks, this doesn't work. You guys got to think about like market fit, you know, differently. Or you're going to be like, this kind of works, but it's hard for me to create like elasticity in my messaging. So there's some markets where like greatest email, you know, me and Jed could go right. Sorry, I'm actually about to call us like the greatest email guys. So I'm actually not going to do that. But like whoever the, you know, it's like anyone could go write the best email and it's going to perform similarly as like a very mid email. Like there's some environments that are just totally like that. And then there's some environments where you actually will find like, oh, okay, shoot, like this persona, this angle, like totally spikes this, and like let's scale that to the moon. You know what I mean? But if you're in this like I don't know phase, I would deify testing and validation before you're thinking about like scale and sort of like the big picture goals or like future goals.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Anything to add there, Jed?
No, that's great. I guess you asked like one takeaway for folks in this call. It kind of goes back to what you mentioned with the GTM engineering thing. Like, don't worry about that role and all that sort of stuff. But like the underlying reason why I guess it's gaining popularity is that companies are valuing sales reps that know how to use AI, know automation, things like that. So the simplest way to get started if you're at zero is like Elmer, for example, he has a process that is working. It maybe takes him an hour a day, whatever that is. Go find tools that can help you slowly do that job faster or better. Like maybe Elmer is struggling to find better prospects to send those messages to. So find an automation or tools that will help you find those prospects better. And then at the same time, figure out how to use automation AI to do that faster. Like that's just find one area of your process that's working manually, figure out how to automate it, figure out how to do it a little bit better with AI. That's just a good like entryway into starting to learn about this whole world if you're brand new to it.
Yeah, and piggyback on that, like use AI to make your process better and to have a better system and be faster at doing the administrative things that you need to do. Just like the hats say, don't become an AI SDR, right? Like if you start sounding like one, you're not going to get any meetings. You're not going to get any leads. You're going to start to struggle. So use it to fasten up your system and to have a better system in place, but just don't become and sound like an AI SDR, because if you're sending a bunch of emails that sound like AI, you're really putting yourself in a bad spot.
Yep. And I'll just say AI is not a magic button. There's no magic button for sales. And yeah, just know that like AI is not going to save you. So the job is still the job, which is to genuinely care about your prospects. And that's what you should spend your time trying to figure out how to manufacture versus any kind of automated play.
Yep. Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Josh and Kellen and Elmer and Jed, for joining us. Amazing, super interesting conversation. Yeah, we will send out the recording over email, so stay tuned for that, everyone in the chat. Yeah, we'll hope to see you on Aomni, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.